This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I am your host, Ramses Ja. And sometimes the amount of stories that make their way to us means that we simply can't cover everything that comes our way. But from time to time, a story just stays with me, and I feel compelled to share it with you and give you my thoughts. And now, one more thing.
I got one more thing I'd like to talk to you about right now.
Got my heart, I'ma slay it with a knife in my back. What's with that? Ay, 21, I love him, then my brother, that's my stack.
Hey, now that's how we should start the show off every time. Unfortunately, I couldn't play too much of that, and you'll find out why, but sounded pretty good, didn't it? I guess we should explain why I'm so excited about that song. First off, I've been listening to it on repeat for the past 3-4 days. I love it. And it's not the best audio quality, as you've heard. It's certainly not professional in terms of the mixing and mastering, but the content is all there and it slaps. I can't even front. But, you know, for the uninitiated, you might be surprised to find out that that song is not actually Drake. It's not The Weeknd. That song is generated by artificial intelligence, meaning it's all computers. You know, Metro didn't do the beat. Nothing. It was a computer that thought up the whole thing. As far as I know, computer wrote the lyrics, performed the song, did the arrangement in terms of the singing. You know, just think of everything that goes into a song. And it did it masterfully. For those that have heard the complete song, you know, Universal Music Group is in the process of trying to get this removed from the internet. So again, I can't play too much of it. I'm a DJ, so of course I have it in my personal library to, you know, play in the real world. But, you know, I don't want to get in trouble with those guys here. But yeah, man, we're living in strange and exciting times. There's been a few times in my life when I've been like deeply and thoroughly wowed. One time was when I first saw a cell phone with color, like a color screen, like a TV screen. I thought to myself, wow, we're living in the future. I remember one time when Shazam, or the early versions of Shazam, came out. And, you know, again, just thinking, what all does it have to go through to tell you what song you're listening to out of thin air? It seems, you know, natural now, but at that time, there was nothing like that existed. Another time I was wowed, you know, for those that know, I live in Phoenix, Arizona. So this is a test market for a lot of autonomous vehicles. And a while back, I was driving in downtown Phoenix, and the car next to me was a nice Jaguar, and it had like the LiDAR spinning deal on the top of it and some extra LiDAR on the side where the side view mirrors go and all that. And I pulled up next to it and nobody was driving the car. It was just driving down the street by itself. I was floored by that. And if I'm being honest, I felt super safe because I knew that car knew what to do. It was nighttime when I was driving. You know, people get out of the club. Sometimes they've been drinking a little bit. So that car was going to be safe. And I knew that. But I was wowed. Like, we're living in the future. Of course, you've heard me talk about ChatGPT on this show and the AI and how there are a lot of profound changes around the corner here. But that was certainly another moment. And then this one, this whole song, to a person like me, a DJ, a Drake fan, a Weeknd fan, you know, I've spent time as a music producer. So I pay particular attention to music production, certain styles of production, certain producers' styles. I heard this song virtually indistinguishable. And when I say virtually, I mean literally, I would not have known the difference if no one had told me this was artificial intelligence. I would have thought that it was a leak, the same as some other folks on the internet were thinking that. Now, I just want to remind you again what we're up against. So I'm going to play a little bit more here.
Got these girls on my track, like Selena, baby, on my cheating, baby, yeah. Sticking a Lambo for a drive, it's in the fence door.
So again, you should definitely try to find the full song online, but I want to remind you that this is an artificial brain, we'll call it. Granted, it's a language model and a music model and so forth, all these things working together, but for our purposes, we'll call it a brain. Think of everything that it needs to do to produce something like this. It needs the beat, it needs lyrics, it needs the voice matching component. You know, we remember the deep fakes that came out a few years ago, that can approximate the voice of, you know, certain celebrities or whatever, anyone with a lot of content online. It needed to match the cadence, you know, at the end of every bar is like, yeah. And, you know, the little bounce that makes the song flow. The pop culture metaphors, the references, the ad libs. Of course, we talked about the singing, all that stuff needs to go into it. And it passes the Turing test, for those that are computer geeks. Because again, there's no way for me to know, a person who's very familiar, intimately familiar with this type of music, whether or not a computer made it. If you'd asked me, I would have said absolutely not. But in fact, this is what is the case, according to everything that is up in arms about this moment. And I want to talk about this for a second. We've been overly critical of artificial intelligence. I think that a lot of people stand to make money by scaring us. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be concerned about what's around the corner. The future is here. The future is now. We recognize that people are using little things to scare us. The fact that the WALL-E, the painting app or the picture creation app, can't get hands right and get fingers right, you know, and that ChatGPT sometimes makes factual mistakes, right? And everyone that stands to profit from our being afraid of this throws their hands up. And it causes us to look at what's wrong with these instead of the reality, which is what's right with these things is incredible, right? Granted, things are changing, but change is the only constant. And then the other part of this is that we need to bear in mind today, these things are the worst that they'll ever be. They will never be as bad as they are today. They're only going to get better. Now, again, we're talking about creativity. It's one thing to model pictures and paintings and artwork and that sort of stuff. It's another thing to model language, which again is mind blowing, but to model music. Now I've been following artificial intelligence for some time, so I've seen these things, but they've always kind of approximated classical music and things that don't rely on what I would consider to be very human based, experience based disciplines. Again, pop culture metaphors. Why does, 21 mean 21 Savage and not the number 21? Why does Selena mean Selena Gomez and not Selena the Tejano singer, right? And what are the implications of that? And so this is why my mind is blown now, and it wasn't quite as blown when I saw artificial intelligence recreating classical music styles, I should say. And, Drake is arguably top 5 on anyone's list. And most folks would put him at number 1 for the past decade or so in terms of consistency, content, chart position, influence culturally, and on and on. And it'd be hard for me to argue with that. I'm a big Tupac fan, so I'll always give him number one. And of course, you can debate me on that. I stand by it, and I've defended that position for many years. But I can't argue with recent history at all. And this song for all intents and purposes, is a Drake song. So it gets you to start thinking like, okay, so what do we need Drake for at this point? It's an interesting thought to have. And so the point is not just to tell you about this, but also to kind of get an idea of, where we go from here. In where I live, there's a lot of stuff going on. There are, as I mentioned, the self-driving cars. There are delivery drones where, a drone will bring your package to your house and then lower a smaller drone to deliver a package to your doorstep, and will rejoin the bigger drone and fly back to the hub. It's happening right now. So as they continue to build information on that and fine tune it and refine it, my estimation is that eventually there will be no more delivery drivers. Why would we need DoorDash drivers when you can buy 6 or 8 drones and be done with it? And hopefully pass on that cost savings to your customers. Again, the driverless cars. This is where I live, is the city where they're modeling. And what my opinion, and based on what I've seen, is the most advanced version of self-driving cars. And it's my reality. I've seen it with these eyes. In fact, I was driving next to one this past weekend, again, on my way home from downtown Phoenix late at night. So that, coupled with what we're seeing in terms of artificial intelligence in the creative space, and the combination of those things, means that at some point in the near future, we're going to have to come to terms with how this will impact us. Will we all share less work overall? Will new industries pop up around these new technologies? Or will we ultimately render ourselves and our individual labor obsolete? And my inclination is that we're kind of moving toward the latter. I'm not saying it's right around the corner, but I am saying that in my estimation, in the next few years, we're going to see a lot of changes, and it's going to upset the balance of our lives. What gives us purpose? What gives us income? Now, I'm an optimist, unfortunately. And I'm a person that tends to be very hopeful. Ideally, these things would take care of the redundant, menial tasks that we have to deal with in society. Some of the ones I've mentioned, and some of the ones I'm sure you can imagine yourselves. And of course, the creative space, the one thing that we always held to be quintessentially human, is not off limits when it comes to AI, as we've seen in more than just this example we're discussing today. So now we need to have the conversation. Well, what if we do render ourselves obsolete? Well, I want to put a bug in your ear. A term that will be central in debates in the future, the next few years, will be UBI. Stands for Universal Basic Income. And the idea is effectively everyone will be entitled to a base level of income. And it's not welfare if everybody gets it. It's just the way that we can prop up society. If massive corporations will make all the money and there are no jobs for people to work, then the corporations cannot continue to make money if there's no money to spend, right? And so there has to be an infusion of capital into society in order for the economic system that we're using, capitalism, to continue to function. And so some of the early conversations around this is that a lot of critics of the idea of universal basic income say that if we give people money without conditions, then folks will stop working, right? Meaning everyone will stop working, which, based on pilot testing of this concept, that turns out to be that actually folks with universal basic income actually end up working more than folks without universal basic income. They're inspired to create new ways of generating ideas that are profitable, products or whatever, what have you. Critics also say things like, it'll cost too much. But again, in those same models, it turns out that, money spent on universal basic income reduced other costs that ended up being greater than the cost of the universal basic income. And so you start to see how critics of this model will frame their arguments. And I'm a believer in this, especially if things end up going the way that I believe they will go. Again, my hope is that we reach a point where we don't have to do the stuff that we don't want to do. We're free to pursue the things that we enjoy rather than things that we have to do. As you well know, most folks do not love work. I'm not talking about Drake. I'm not talking about The Weeknd. I'm talking about most of us. And with these brains, computer brains, doing the thinking, doing the manual labor, doing the driving, there's a lot of industries that are about to be shaken up. So now's the time when I turn it over to you. What are your thoughts? Did you know this song was artificial intelligence, or did you think it was a Drake song? And now that you know the truth, how do you feel about it? Do you still feel like your job is safe? I know full well that all iHeart needs to do is license my voice and my image, and they can make these shows themselves. But for now, it's still me. So again, I would love to talk to you. Reach out to me using the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app, or you can reach out to me on all social media at Ramses Ja. And before I go, I'd like to give a shout out to George Stephen Fountain for the super thanks on YouTube. And I will talk to you all later. This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show is produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.